Another interesting dynamic within relationships is the contradiction and the tensions that we feel, and that's described in Montgomery and Baxter's work on relational dialectics. And this give and take that we have on certain issues, we actually studied earlier in the semester when we talked about things like autonomy and independence, and then also this whole idea of novelty and prediction. But there's also a particular dialectic that's related to self-disclosure, and that is going to be the dialectic of openness and closeness. And we have really a balancing act that goes on in our relationships, in which we are trying to balance our need for opening up to another person and desiring them to open up back to us to achieve that breadth and depth so that we can have a greater level of intimacy. And then also we have needs and we have values for privacy, especially in certain cultures where it's more formal and privacy is valued more. And so this is necessarily not something that we consciously think about all the time. However, there are times in which we would desire maybe privacy or openness over one or the other. In considering this, what we want sometimes is discretion in relationships, and that would be when we tend to value privacy more. Then when we want openness, we would be valuing self-disclosure more. And you may have actually felt out of sync with a relational partner at a particular time. Maybe you felt like your relationship didn't merit certain levels of disclosure, where the other person was really asking you questions that you were almost trying to avoid because you didn't really want to open up about that area. And maybe it switched at a certain point in time. That's because your relationship fluctuates, it changes over time, and where one person may be in that relationship in regard to the other person is going to vary. And so it can be conceivable that one person would value discretion and privacy at one point in the relationship more than the other relational partner, and that actually may switch later on in the relationship. And just because someone values privacy, just because someone wants to manage their privacy and wants to show discretion in a relationship, does not necessarily mean they don't want to achieve greater levels of intimacy gradually with you. It may just mean that it's not appropriate for them at that certain time. It may mean that there's certain past experiences that make them feel more vulnerable in relationships, and so they don't feel like they can discuss certain topics. Maybe they have a fear of rejection from you. So there may be a variety of reasons why the other person might choose to value privacy over disclosure. Vulnerability is an issue, especially when someone's been hurt in the past. They felt like possibly someone has taken what they've said out of context, or they may have felt like a relational partner violated their confidence. They told them something in confidence and they violated that ethical maxim by then going out and sharing that information with other people. They may feel stabbed in the back. And so if they have a certain level of vulnerability, they may choose to value privacy. Also, we value privacy when we fear judgment. We feel like if we disclose that information at this given time, the other person would judge us harshly. Maybe it might be that we're angry, and in our thoughts of anger, we're not thinking necessarily rationally, and so we might have a lot of thoughts that if we reveal them to someone else, they may criticize us greatly for it and judge us harshly. And so maybe when we're angry, we choose to withhold more information and be more private about it. And that would just be an example or an illustration of one way we may fear judgment. Also, another thing that we may be considering in terms of valuing privacy over disclosure would be if we thought it may do harm to the relationship. If we felt like giving information in regard to the topic we're being asked to speak on or that's come up within the conversation would harm the relationship itself. Yeah, I guess that age-old question, do I look bad in these jeans, or does this make me look fat? There's a variety of questions like that, but you may think to yourself, I don't really want to answer this question at this given time, because if I answer it the way I think, maybe it may do harm to the relationship. That's a really kind of superficial example, but it serves the point that there are times that we possibly choose not to give information because we really want to protect the relationship itself. There are some ways that we can strategically manage privacy, and this is when we're being conscious about managing our privacy. There are times in which we are unconsciously managing our privacy, but it's not necessarily something we're thinking about. And so this, though, would be in occasions when we're really trying to do this more strategically. When we're faced with a situation where we feel very uncomfortable disclosing information, you're not left without choice. You don't have to, if someone revealed information in regard to that subject matter or in depth that you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to reciprocate, okay? You have a choice. You could change the subject, and that's one way that we go about managing our privacy, is we bring up a different subject or we ask a different question that gets the conversation going in a totally different direction. And so if someone asks you, like say in the workplace, how you felt about a coworker, and you're like going, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be talking about this, I feel really uncomfortable with that. Or maybe the coworker is really your boss and you're thinking, oh dear, if I get caught talking about them, this would be really bad for me. So you might change the subject, and that would be a way that you could deal with it. So rather than talking about the coworker, maybe you talk about your work environment in general. Another option that you would have would be to tell a white lie. So instead of necessarily telling the truth, maybe you avoid it, maybe you omit key information. And some people, though, that's not ethical for them. And lots of times I enjoy kind of having a debate with students about, when is it okay to tell a white lie? When is it not okay to tell a white lie? Is it ever okay to tell what we would consider a white lie? Because we may think of it as being a harmless lie, something that's simple and it's not meaningful to us, but to the other person, is it considered the same level of harmlessness? And if they knew that we were being less than forthcoming, how would they feel about that? And would it damage the relationship? I mean, those are questions that you have to ask yourself. And it may not be the best choice for you, and I'm not trying to advocate it as a best choice. I'm just saying that some people have pursued this as a way in which to manage their privacy. Another approach is just being honest with the other person, being direct with them and saying, hey, look, I'm not comfortable talking about this right now. Maybe later I will be, but at this given time, I'm just not comfortable. I hope you understand. So there are ways that we can manage our privacy so that we are able to show the kind of discretion that we feel comfortable with in our relationships. And you have to remember that some people, because of their culture, their background, their experiences, they're going to progress differently than you will in relationships. And you have to understand that doesn't mean that you or the other person doesn't necessarily want the same goals in your relationship. It just may mean that you have a different timetable in terms of how you reach those goals.